guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking about the must-have baits for spring bass fishing. Spring bass fishing will be here before you know it. It creeps up on us every year because bass start making moves towards spring, towards the earliest pre-spawn, while the weather conditions are still cold. It still feels like winter, but the bass are making huge shifts. And with that in mind, these baits will be critical to your bass fishing much sooner than most anglers realize. So today we're taking a minute to jump ahead and we're talking about those critical baits that you want to have in your lineup in the spring as a well-rounded bass angler. Now, not everybody likes all these categories, but all of these categories are major players in the springtime. We will catch giant bass on literally every single one of these over the next couple of months. The first one, these are in no particular order, okay? What we've done is I've broken it down by category and I've grabbed one or two key baits in each one of those categories just to give you some examples of what we use, what we have the most confidence in, so that if you don't have confidence in that category and you want to give it a try, you know exactly what Tim and I will be throwing. The first one is an A-rig. The A-rig, some people love the A-rig, some people want nothing to do with it. We understand that. The A-rigs are unbelievable fish catchers. We've been throwing them since fall. It's nothing new. Most of us have thrown them all the way through the winter, but the A-rig will continue to be a player through the springtime. Some of the largest bass caught every spring are caught on the A-rig. Now, for the guys who don't like A-rig fishing, it's typically because they're cumbersome, they're awkward, they're heavy, they're not fun to fish with. And that is where these two come in. I'm sure you guys already recognize these. Tim and I partnered with Hog Farmer a few years ago to build lighter, more flexible A-rigs. We started with the Flex Rig, then we had the Mini, and this year we launched the Micro. The whole purpose here is to create A-rigs that get bit in more situations and are easier for anglers to fish. Like the Micro, 3-inch swim baits, 1/8 ounce heads, you can literally throw this on a spinning rod or a bait finesse rod. You can throw it comfortably on 10 to 12 pound line all day long. Whether you've had injuries and it's hard for you to cast, you're younger, you're not comfortable with a bait caster, it doesn't matter. Everybody can throw the Micro. This thing literally weighs, when you use 1/8 ounce heads, this thing weighs the same as a spinnerbait. It's nothing to throw this thing all day long. Just cast it around comfortably. Again, I like to throw it on a bait finesse rod. That's my favorite way to fish it. And then the Mini is just a little bit larger, but way smaller still than a traditional full-size A-rig. Both are very comfortable to fish with. But the A-rig, regardless of the size, is a major player. Bass in the spring, when they make their move shallow, they want to feed. They're there to eat. That's how that thing gets kicked off. And representing a school of bait fish gets those fish to react. There's no way around it. Hopefully those smaller, easier to fish A-rigs will help you if you're a guy who doesn't enjoy fishing an A-rig most of the time. I mean, you can throw it on regular tackle. You're not out there trying to heave it on some giant rod with heavy line, none of that. Just pitch those things around, catch fish on them. The next category for me is a chatterbait. The chatterbait and spinnerbait, I go back and forth, and I've actually left the spinnerbait out of this video, but it's so hard to do that. I've got to draw a line somewhere, right? For me, in the early spring, the chatterbait takes the cake. The chatterbait is such a deadly bait. The bladed jig. Throw that thing out, wind it back, that blade's up there vibrating. But a tip that I'll give you about chatterbait fishing is to be erratic. I like to dance my bait, so I don't just slow roll. I'll work that thing, pop that rod tip, get that bait to dance. This is the jackhammer. If I could only have one, it's a 1/2 ounce jackhammer paired up to a 5.5 spunk shad, okay? Hog Farmer makes the spunk shad. Missile Baits also licenses the spunk shad from Hog Farmer. So both companies have that bait in completely different colors. There's awesome colors in both lineups and you should take a look at them. But for me, the 5.5 size is the deal. Most people throw the 4.5. It's a proven fish catcher. People smash with that 4.5, but the 5.5 takes the action. See that tail dancing even as my hand barely moves? The 5.5 takes that action to another level. If you put a spunk shad on the back of a chatterbait and you work that rod, you work that reel and get aggressive with it, this thing will dance and cut and move through the water unlike any other bait. And it is amazing how fish react to it. That's green pumpkin shad. Again, if I could only have one, that jackhammer and a 1/2 ounce, green pumpkin shad would be the one, and then pair that up to a trailer color of your choice. Now, a lot of people are fishing smaller fisheries or pressured fisheries or ponds. Maybe you're bank fishing. Don't overlook this little guy. From Z-Man, this is the Mini Max. The Mini Max, when this came out, I was over the moon about this thing, and I still am. Look at the size difference between that and just a standard jackhammer. Huge difference, right? This will get bit in a lot of situations where the larger profiles won't. I've got that rigged up with that big bite kamikaze swim on, but it's the little one. Again, I'll link all this stuff in the video description for you in the order that we're talking about it. So it will be very easy for you to find. We'll give you our favorite sizes, our favorite colors, all those things. We'll break that down in the video description below this video. On YouTube, you might have to click more below the video, scroll down, click more again. You might have to hit the 3 little dots. On our website, you just scroll down, it's all right there. But no matter where you're seeing this video, there is a description below the video tucked away that has all this linked for you to Tackle Warehouse. Again, going back to that Mini Max, downsized profile, but a heavy duty hook. And that heavy duty hook is key because in spring, when those giants push into the shallows, we don't want to lose those fish. These baits are capable of getting monster bites. And you want to get those fish in the boat or to the bank. So that Mini Max with that hook, that super heavy wire, small hook, does a fantastic job. Next one for me is a square bill. Square bill crankbaits take the cake in spring. I will have a square bill tied on, if not 2 or 3 or 4, literally every single day of the spring. I will not leave my house without a square bill tied to a rod. It's that big of a factor for me. You'll notice too, all the baits I'm talking about here are reaction baits, baits that we fish quickly. In the spring, when bass start pushing shallow, they're not everywhere, and you've got to cover water to find them. But when you find them, it's some of the best fishing of the year. So again, that square bill is a bait that I can fish aggressively, I can fish them fast, stop and go, around cover, and I can draw reaction strikes. If you've seen us talk square bills in the last year, you already know which 2 baits I'm holding up. The colors are also not a mistake. I love throwing red and orange square bills in the early spring. It's amazing how well they work. 2 baits for you. From Rapala, that's the OG Rocco. The Rocco is an unbelievable bait. This is the Bill Lewis ATV. Also an unbelievable bait. But these 2 baits together, night and day different, and I have both of them tied on. They're completely different, and they both crush fish. The square bill category has gotten so broad. There are so many baits that last fall we actually shot a dedicated, in-depth seminar specifically on squarebill fishing. Just that one little category, a full seminar. If you missed it, you need to find that video. In fact, I'll link it in the video description for you so you can find it. But the category is so broad, but come springtime, these two baits are on deck, period. The Rocco has the fastest startup speed of any squarebill I've ever seen, which means you can throw a squarebill out and wind it back. But just like the chatterbait, I like to dance my baits. I like them to move. Typically, you gotta burn and pause, burn, 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 pause, burn, 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 pause your squarebill. The Rocco starts up so fast, it vibrates so quickly when you start it, that this isn't burn, 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 pause. This is literally just twitch, pause, handle turn, 2 handle turns, 1 handle turn, half turn, and it just darts, stops. And I dance it. Cold water, those fish will be creeping long before the conditions warm up. They don't want to go flying after a bait necessarily. A lot of times they'll get right up on a piece of shallow cover, and when I dance this across them and it pauses, they're willing to pop that thing because it's right in front of them. Now, the ATV, on the other hand, this is the 4x4 of squarebills. This thing is so snagless, it's amazing. So if I've got to go shallow, stumps, laid downs, junk in the water, I know there's debris up there, there's rock, that is my bait. I can plow it through anything. Burn, 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 pause, run it, stop, run it, stop, pause over a piece of cover, run it straight through a laid down tree and hit every single branch without even stopping, and it doesn't snag any of the branches. I don't know how they did it. I just know that it comes through heavy cover unlike any other squarebill on the market. But when a bass unloads on this thing, they still hook up. It's crazy. I don't understand how it works, but it has worked countless times for me. So a squarebill is a major player, and those two baits specifically are such a deadly 1-2 punch. They should be in every angler's lineup. The next one is going to be a squarebill. I just said squarebill. Is going to be an underspin. The underspin is another one of those baits that just plain gets bit. Here's a tip for you in the spring. I love to throw a bear swim bait, but come spring, in a lot of lakes, that water's still gonna be dingy. Maybe not muddy, but dingy. Flash, a blade. Notice my A-rigs all had blades on them. Chatterbait, it's got that blade on it. The underspin, that blade is critical. I will always start with an underspin with a blade in the spring before I go to a bear swimbait head. I try the blade first because fish will come farther to get it. The underspin just works. I like a downsized profile in the spring. This is our underspin. Tim and I built this underspin with dirty jigs. It's a very small profile, but with a very heavy wire hook. So you can throw it on 6-pound, but you can also throw it on 10 or 12-pound without an issue. That thing just flat catches them. There's so much to be said for that added flash in the springtime. Next up is the lipless crankbait. The lipless, you can't talk spring bass fishing without talking about a lipless crankbait. Tim just did a phenomenal job of covering this subject, so we won't go super in depth here. I'll just show you two of my personal favorites. One that we have thrown day after day after day for years, and one that I added this fall. The first is the Jackal TN series, either the TN60 or the TN70. That bait is so remarkable. It works so well. We can burn them, of course, but we like to bottom hop these baits. That's where the magic is in the springtime with a lipless, that slow bottom hop. That TN series is so deadly for that. And then the other one, the one I started playing with this past fall from Nomad, That's the Swim-Trex Max. That bait specifically, this is a 1/2 ounce, and you notice it's a very small lipless. I'm getting phenomenal action out of that bait. It is super aggressive. So when I pop it off the bottom, the vibration is instant, but the profile is very small. And the theme the last couple of years has been downsizing. We are downsizing a lot of our baits, and this last fall I did a lot of damage with that smaller Swim-Trex Max. It just caught them for me. Again, super fast startup on that thing. So some lipless, they're not all made equal, especially when we're talking about the bottom hopping technique. They're just not. Some baits, you have to rip them so hard to get them to work. That's what I love about those Jackal TNs. It's nothing to get those baits to flutter. It's nothing. You just barely move them. Same thing with that Nomad, but the Nomad is an even smaller profile, particularly in the 1/2 ounce. All right, we'll leave that right there, because again, Tim has done such a great job on that subject just a few days ago. Last but not least is a jerkbait. The jerkbait, again, major player here. I had to draw the line somewhere, because I'd love to talk about spinner baits, swim baits, and then of course there are slow baits, jigs, shaky heads, so many things to talk about. But we have to draw a line. The one more bait that is just a must-have is that jerkbait. We've been throwing jerkbaits all through the winter. You know, the Megabass Vision series, particularly that 110 Junior +1, is such a deadly bait because it's so well balanced. You can hover it over the top of those fish. If you're on a clear water fishery, a highland fishery, that 110 +1 Junior will continue to shine as we go into spring. Highland reservoirs, those fish will start pulling back towards creeks, setting up on those secondary points, and that bait will get down and stay over the top of those fish. But on a lot of lakes, these fish are pushing shallow. And this is the time of year where I start transitioning to baits that flash. And I mean, I want flash coming out of those baits. I want them throwing light as those jerk baits are moving. A lot of sound, a lot of flash. That brings me to these two right here. These are both by Shimano. You got the Zoom Verno 95 SP, the Zoom Verno, and then of course we've got the World Minnow. These two baits are very similar profiles, but very, very different sizes. Both of them have flash boost. See that flashing inside there even as I hold the bait still? It's remarkable how much light these baits will throw. They cover a ton of water, they're aggressive, they're loud, and they throw light. I love that as we head into spring. The Zoom Verno is smaller and more erratic. It darts more aggressively than the World Minnow, but the World Minnow is just that larger, full profile, full presence, tons of flash. I do incredibly well on both. It just comes down to a size preference. Are your bass typically chasing smaller bait fish on your lake, or are they chasing bigger bait fish on your lake? That's how you make your decision. Guys, spring will creep up on you. The pre-spawn in particular, it can be snowing and those bass will still make those shallower water transitions as they head towards the areas where they will ultimately spawn. But it will creep up on you, and these baits have a funny way of being out of stock come springtime. It can be so hard to get your hands on a red squarebill, it's not even funny. The critical colors of chatterbaits, can't get them. So we wanted to get this information to you ahead of time so that you could prepare. And again, these are important categories. In the video description, we're linking these exact baits, our favorites, and we'll give you our favorite colors for them as well to help you out as much as we can. Guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.